growth. You know, I thought about how to present this, and I've seen a lot of diagrams where, and I think that, you know, the way that I would do this, if you said, look, come in and help us figure it out, you know, we would start and say, okay, here's sales. Okay, how many ways could we, you know, what's one thing we could work on? Let's just brainstorm about the number of ways to work at sales and how to improve sales, right? Because if we want to improve cash flow, there's generally two ways to do it. One is we could work at growing the top line with good margins, or more or less, you got to look at taking costs out that are inefficient, right? You'd start there, generally two places. But when you really get into the subset of what that means, there's a lot of choices, right? If you're at the sales level, you know, I would do some kind of a brainstorming session first and say, okay, what are the various things we think are available to us when I work with clients on this kind of stuff? Let's start by just saying, let's consider everything, and then go back and prioritize what is the low-hanging fruit. What are the 20% of the things that are going to give us 80% of the results, right? Because you can't do everything. So let's try to look at the areas that we think will have the most impact, because you can't do it all. So, you know, here you're talking about, you know, again, next level would be you're either going to sell more stuff to your existing customers, or you're going to sell new things to them, right? Or you're going to get new customers, right? There's a couple of buckets to concentrate. I don't know what's best for your business, what's the best opportunity. But when you really break sales down, you can, and what I was going to do, but I figured we would run out of time, which we would, but the way I would see it is you would brainstorm, or I see a lot of tree diagrams that say, okay, you know, we could start out with sales, and we could say, you know, increase current customers, we could get new customers, we could raise prices, we could change geography, right? And then, okay, then say, okay, new customers. Okay, well, what does that mean? You know, what are the ways we're going to do that? How are we going to, you know, what new line extensions are we going to do to sell more to new customers? Are we going to, you know, have salespeople cross over and try to cross-sell? It could be a million things, right? But you got to get this organized. And I've seen a lot of these tree diagrams where you kind of start and say, okay, this is the goal, this is an option, this is an option, this is an option, and then it continues to branch out into other strategies, and then you end up picking the one that suits. Because the reality is it's an endless possibility. And to be able to move the needle at all, you can't do all of them. You got to think about what is the low-hanging fruit. But generally speaking, you know, new products or services, so introducing new things, line extensions, meaning sell new stuff to existing customers. You could expand geography, you could expand market share. You could look at your pricing, right? Because your volume is driven by, you know, unit volumes and pricing. Do you have pricing a bit, you know, flexibility? When's the last time you looked at your pricing? Your marketing and advertising effectiveness comes in there. You know, then when you go to the cost of goods sold line, goes back to that inventory thing. This is hard. But here you're looking at, you know, you're really looking at whether you can lower your cost of goods sold. What does that mean? Well, you could look at a waste reduction program. Rob Olszewski's not here. He does a lot of work with clients on waste reduction. Looking at throughput, this is like shop floor stuff. How do we increase capacity? How do we increase, you know, utilization of our people? What's our right head count? 3 shifts, 2 shifts, all that kind of stuff on your shop floor. And then at the gross margin line, both of these things affect it, but there's also things that we actually do a lot of this for clients, which is what we'll call customer analysis, segment analysis. Have you ever done this? You know, you look at, you know, if a company has, as an example, if you haven't done this, you should think about it. So our Iron Hill company, right, its sales were, if you look at, remember the percentages, sales, cost of goods sold was 72 or 73, and margins were 27, as I recall, right? Roughly what I remember. So that was its annual P&L, right? So this is what I would ask you to think about. What does this represent in terms of transactions in a year? How many transactions? in your company? Thousands? Could be millions? How many customers does it represent? Remember, this is a summary of everything. How many customers make this up? If you were able to do a P&L for each customer group, what would it look like? If you were able to break this down by product line, what would it look like? So I'll tell you what usually happens when we do this work. Everybody looks at this and assumes that everything yields that number. But when you break it down into its finite parts, you end up with a bunch of stuff. This is just an average. Right? It's an average, which means that there's stuff north of the average and there's stuff down here. Well, we don't really care so much about what's going on here, right? But we could care a lot about how to deal with the part that's dragging the average down. And what could it be? Could be certain customers. Could be certain product lines. What's on the south side of the average and how are you going to attack it? All customers are not made the same. And unless you're in a retail business, I'll break the news to you, you have the right to price discriminate. Retailers, Amazon.com has to sell the book to me at the same price that they would sell it to Betty. But if you're in a business-to-business, you don't have to charge the same price to everybody. If you have a customer that orders regularly all year long and it's recurring and it's large, they get A. You have somebody that comes in twice a year and wants a special project. Well, whoa, wait a minute. They get A+. They get some extra, they don't pay the same as our best customer. So if you don't have your head around that, if you're just looking at this as our margins and you don't understand the makeup of it, there's a lot of room to be made there. Truthfully, in my experience, if I were going to start this analysis, I'd start there. That's me, based on work we've done at a lot of companies. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit when you do a customer and product line analysis. Sales, cost of goods sold, and margin. Some of the results are often very revealing. And then, overheads just has to do with efficiency and head count and whether you have too many people. You can benchmark yourself, but you ought to be looking at it.